Columbia University, and whereas Dr. Bill Quirk had a 35-year career as a computational hydrodynamicist, and I think I'm going to ask you not to explain to us what that means tonight, but it was a long time ago, right? Whereas after a postdoctoral fellowship at Caltech, Dr. Quirk went to NASA Goddard, where he developed one of the first global three-dimensional models of the Earth's climate. He joined Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. He became one of the nation's foremost technical experts on foreign nuclear weapons, and he was instrumental in the successful negotiations for the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. Whereas Dr. Quirk moved to Hayward in 1978 and started his strong record of public service. I mean, on top of all that science stuff, it started with his tenure as PTA president during his children's school years in the Hayward Public School System, whereas he has served the Hayward community through many organizations, including taking the role of chair and president of the Hayward Friends of the Library and serving in the Hayward Library on the Hayward Library Commission, Hayward Rotary, Hayward Area Historical Society, Board of the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency, and the Hayward Shoreline Planning Agency, whereas Dr. Quirk also served as a City of Hayward council member from 2004 to 2012, where he led the revival of the city's downtown and fought to keep the city's budget balanced during the 2008 economic downturn. Whereas he was elected to the California State Assembly in November 2012 and worked on issues addressing energy, climate change, transportation, and public safety during his decade-long career. Whereas his role as an assembly member, Dr. Quirk served as chair of the Assembly Committee on Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials, which is responsible for reviewing bills that cover the following areas: toxic substances and hazardous materials, hazardous waste reduction, drinking water regulation, and pesticides. As the only scientist in the legislature, data and research played a major role in his approach to legislation. And whereas, since becoming the chair of the Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials Committee, Dr. Quirk authored legislation on lead in children, recycled water, contaminants of emerging concern in drinking water, and harmful algae blooms. Now, therefore, I, Barbara Halliday, Mayor of the City of Hayward, on behalf of the City Council, city employees, and residents of the City of Hayward, do hereby proclaim our gratitude for your contributions, enormous contributions, really, to the City of Hayward and the state of California, and congratulate you on your retirement. It has been a privilege and honor to work with you for the betterment of Hayward, and we hereby certify your accomplishments and contributions as significant and long-lasting. And so, join me in applauding us. Yeah, turn it back on. The red, yeah, means it's on.
Oh, red light microphone is on. Oh, yes. Good. Well, it's so good to see you again. And Barbara and I are so pleased that she wanted to be mayor and I wanted to go to the legislature. And we've just been friends for so long. We worked together politically as well, getting people elected, getting good Democrats elected. For a number of years before we got elected ourselves. So here's my presentation. This is a couple days before the end of our legislative session, and that is a very conservative Republican greeting me. The thing I want to say about Sacramento is it is not D.C. A majority of the things that we worked on are things that just about everybody could vote for. They were just good government. And there's not this idea there that a victory for you is a defeat for me. We worked together. One of the most important bills while I was there was, in fact, repairing a bill to make sure that all of after the Oroville Dam almost collapsed, looking at all of our dams across the state and getting involved. And that was that was authored by the Republican who represented the Oroville area. So we can work together in Sacramento. There are times, like on guns, where we disagree, but frankly, Democrats can sometimes disagree on those things too. So I just want to say it's a great atmosphere there, and there are exceptions, but by and large, these are people who respect one another, respect that there can be differences. And that was true. Remember when you and I came on the council, Barbara, it wasn't so true. And I think it became much more true because of us, and is very true today. So it's a great council. I really think that what you've done in housing over these last few years has been spectacular. I don't know of a city that's done better in terms of putting dense housing near transit. And I think you have really succeeded in doing what's necessary here to have more housing in Hayward. We still have a lot of problems, but I think that the council has done just a great job in addressing that problem in particular and many others. So congratulations, council, mayor. Thank you. Next slide. So we had an extraordinary 2 budget years. I don't think it's going to be this way next year. The stock market's going down as opposed to up, and that is one of the problems we have here in the state. Too much is tied in with what a few major earners make. But at any rate, we are giving back tax refunds, which we hope will help people with rising inflation, particularly cost of gas and other essentials. One thing that we always are hearing from, and we should hear from cities across the state, is that the Caltrans right-of-ways are just far too covered with detritus of one type or another. There's $1 billion to clean that up. $200 million in key reproductive right investment, and that is for the purpose of making sure that we have adequate infrastructure, because we expect the demand to go up as people from states, nearby states where they're prohibiting abortion, to come to California. $2.2 billion for encampment resolutions, meaning find a place other than an encampment where the homeless can go, some sort of bridge housing, and also the care court. The care court is a court which, I mean, we've seen this. Well, I will say this. Most people who are homeless are people who've had, a bad couple of months where they couldn't make the rent. But there are those who are out on the street who clearly do not have all their senses with them. And that's what the care court is for. It's to look at what is the best situation for these people who clearly need some sort of mental health. We're also extending the social safety net to all residents, meaning that whether you're documented or not, you will be able to get health care and get Medicaid. And then we have, again, to help small businesses, we have loans to small businesses, venture capital, et cetera. This is money, the 9.5 billion and the 1.1, coming to people who are going to need help because they haven't done as well as these individuals that we're taxing to get that money. Next slide. In part because of Prop 98 and because the budget has looked so good, we've been able to have a 13% increase in the local control funding formula, which is the base formula for the schools. When I started in 2012-13, the school budget was $58 billion. It's now $110 billion. And we've gone from being last among the states to in the top dozen or so. Higher ed funding went from $10 billion to $40 billion. And you may remember all of this controversy. They didn't want UC and CSUs to raise tuition, but the cuts in higher ed, because of the 07-08, were just so great that both K-12 education as well as higher ed just didn't have the kind of money they needed. And in 23-24, UC is going to have $10 billion, CSU 8, community college is 16, and a lot of that has to do with our desire to make community college free for people who are trying to get through in a couple of years. Next slide. We had some, now these are things which I asked for, which were given, the first couple of items at any rate, and the fourth item. So we asked for money, so many of you in Hayward are going down Crow Canyon, but the speeds on that and the number of accidents and the fatalities are pretty large. It's one of the most dangerous highways in the state. We are actually going to get money for roundabouts and other physical manner of keeping the speeds down on that highway, so it'll be safer for everyone. We just had a check presentation, $5.7 million for the Mission Paradise Housing Project. Both Senator Rakowski and I worked on that. And then another project, we have a biorepository keeping track of the DNA and the plants in our area, in our state, and it needed a certain amount of money to continue going on, as well as $10 million for what's called the California Council on Science and Technology Policy Fellows. These are 10 PhDs, 5 go to the Assembly, 5 go to the Senate, to act for a year as helpers in various committees, and many of whom stay on to work in either the Assembly or Senate or go on to executive positions. And they're all PhDs in science, and it's a great program. And then in a more general sense, we were able to eliminate the cultivation tax on cannabis, at least for the next couple of years. And then there's going to be some criteria for whether or not that continues. The reason it's important is that the illegal market is much cheaper than the legal market. So we have to eliminate some of the taxes that we had been putting on. And this one is one that never made a lot of sense, even the way it was constructed. Next slide. We also, over the last couple of years, got money to the Stack Community Center in South Hayward. For the city of Fremont, $7.2 million to look at the, many of you have probably looked at how do you get from 880 over to 680 or back, and the answer is you go over Mission Boulevard, and it's a mess. This is money to look at an alternative where there'd be a highway interchange. Money for the Hayward Navigation Center that I know Sarah Lamden in particular has been involved with since before she came on council. But the council and the work they did here, and frankly, the acceptance of the people of Hayward for that navigation center, that wasn't true in every city. So again, thank you, citizens of Hayward, for realizing that people need help and they can get help without any problems in your lives. $1 million for the California Mosquito Disease Surveillance Program. $10 million to look at how do we reach our greenhouse gas reduction goals with regard to with regard to transportation. And we have a goal. We're supposed to stop selling all but zero-emission vehicles in 2035. Can we really do that? What do we have to have in the way of infrastructure? That's what that money is for. And then $5 million the previous year to this one, again for California Council on Science and Technologies and their programs. Finally, this is separate. So these were all things that I had asked for and were given to me on a personal basis. And I got a lot more than most folks because I think they were just great projects. This is $550 million of a more general space, but for foreclosure prevention, where I championed that. And it's a more general part of the budget, obviously at $550 million. It was more than a personal ask. But I'm very proud of that getting passed and done. Next slide. So of the things that happened this year, community assistance recovery, this is the care courts. Again, we mentioned that earlier. This is to help people who do have mental health instability that's keeping them from becoming housed. Extension of the Bagley-Keene. This is basically allowing, here you're the Brown Act, but at the state level it's Bagley-Keene. Here we're allowing people to meet remotely to continue to do that. And there are some committees that just ought to meet in person, but there are others where no one gets per diem, no one's paid to attend. It just makes sense that they be allowed to meet remotely. We also had the Climate Pillars package. So the most important part of that was to make sure that we had electricity, that we had enough, particularly since we're now talking about electric vehicles, electrifying a lot more of the grid. How do we make sure that we have enough electricity? And it turns out that there is a real backlog in getting solar, wind, and other renewables, so we really needed to keep Diablo Canyon open. But we doubled down on carbon neutrality by 2045. We had a goal of 90% reduction by 2050. This is now a goal of carbon neutrality, which is going to require, by the way, taking carbon out of the air. We also have pollution control for new and existing wells within 3,200 feet of homes, schools, and parks. And again, we're going to need to capture carbon, remove it, and store it. So that's a big deal that we've agreed to go ahead on. Next slide. These is my personal bill package. You may remember probably 4 years ago, all of Mission Boulevard, in particular Auto Row, went out of electricity, and that was because of metallic foil balloons. And this happens almost every day across the state and sometimes causes fires because the metallic balloons are conducting, and you get a metallic balloon between two of these wires and you take down the grid, and you can also start a fire. And that was a very tough bill to get passed. You have no idea how strong the balloon lobby is. No idea. But we worked together with them and got it done together. Pesticide prevention, this is the sort of thing you do when you're chair of a committee that deals with pesticides. We've had a long program to look at agricultural workers and others who are exposed to this, and this was an expansion. I've done a lot of work on cannabis over the years. There were a lot of doctors who said, if you're taking cannabis, we can't give you opioids for pain relief. And what we know is that people who take cannabis often have to take fewer opioids and can get off of opioids more easily. This never made a lot of sense. We worked very carefully with the California Medical Association, again, a very powerful lobby, but one that saw the wisdom in this, that every doctor would decide these questions based upon the particulars of that patient, as opposed to some general rule, you're on cannabis, you can't take opioids. It's going to be decided on a patient-by-patient basis. And then cannabis employment discrimination. Right now, the test that's given can determine if you've had cannabis in the last month. For a state that has legalized cannabis, this doesn't make a lot of sense. There are replacement tests that can look at whether or not you've had cannabis and you're still under the influence, and that sort of test now will replace the old one. Altogether, I had 10 bills signed, 1 vetoed, And then something that's very important, a resolution on Muslim awareness. I'll get into that a little later. Next slide. So over the 10 years, I think my most important bills are two that I'll have here, both dealing with telecommunications. There was a soft regulation, a soft time limit on how long it could take a city to okay a wireless installation. And frankly, none of those ever came to council while I was here, or very few of them. But people were, not so much Hayward, but many cities, particularly San Francisco, they were the worst, were taking a year or more to get these approvals done. And now they have a time limit. If they don't do it within that time limit, then it's deemed approved. So I don't think this has ever happened to Hayward, but it has definitely speeded things up in other cities. And then vehicles, there was a regulation saying you can't hold a phone in your hand and talk on the phone, regulation saying you can't text on the phone. But this was hard because somebody could say, well, I was just looking at the Google map. So we came up with a bill which, hey, there's 120 distracted drivers in the legislature. And getting this passed was not easy. I had great staff working with me on it. I really had to push hard. But this says, don't hold your cell phone in your hand. And I remember when it went into effect, seeing a sign on the freeway, don't hold your cell phone in your hand. And this really worked for law enforcement. They could say he had a cell phone in his hand or she didn't. And so it was a bright line for them, and it worked very well. And I believe it has saved countless lives. Next slide. The other thing that I really want to talk about is, you know, we do all sorts of resolutions. I used to say, what calendar has more months than days? And the answer is the legislative council calendar, because they've got a month for this and a month for that. But this is different. Moina Sheikh, who is a good friend of many of us, said, why don't, we recognize Sikhs, we recognize Hindus, we recognize other groups, why not have one for Muslims? And I thought, well, that's just fine, we'll do that. Then the death threats came, and the whole Muslim community embraced this. This was at a time when there were a number of, there was one in San Bernardino where there was where some Muslims had shot people at their workplace. But that was clearly an exception. That had nothing to do with the vast majority of Muslims who we all know. And so this resolution talked about the unparalleled diversity of its residents, recognizing Americans who practice Islam. And one year in particular, I recognized Aisha Wahab. I've recognized other members of Muslims who got elected, but not only being elected here, and there were apparently 2 Afghan-American women elected on the same night as Aisha and one other in the Midwest. And also the San Francisco Business Times recognizing her as 2017's most influential women in the Bay Area business. And we therefore appreciated and talked about the 13 Muslim Nobel Prize winners, the 870 US judges who are Muslim. And this just meant so much to the community. And so it's something I'm particularly proud of. Next slide. So personal reflections, best job I ever had, no doubt. And I've had a lot of jobs, postdoc at Caltech, our country's expert on foreign nuclear weapons programs, McKinsey & Company management consultant. But this was the best because I felt that there was just so much I was getting done, and it was just, and I had great staff, and it was just great. But it's time for me to move on. And it's interesting, the 2 people running, both of whom I like a lot, the 2 people running come from areas that are now outside of what would have been the district had the old lines been kept in place. So it's a good time for me to retire. And I have other things to do, which I'll talk about in a minute. The other thing is, the time when I was elected, the term limit for the Assembly went from 6 years to 12. You now serve for either the Senate for 12 years, the Assembly for 12, or a combination of the two. Most people take 12 years in a particular house, but it simply transformed the institution because Assembly members were running as soon as the Senate seat became available. It meant there was almost no experience. People moved from committee to committee. They didn't get any expertise. This really helps, and it'll help whoever succeeds me become a more successful Assembly member. And again, as I mentioned, people are nice to one another. This isn't DC. I remember saying that when I was sending my goodbyes in the last few days. People are nice to one another. They know that you can disagree on this, but disagree amicably and go on to the next thing, something Barbara and I worked on quite hard in this council. And who is the membership? I remember my wife telling me, Bill, you're going to be swimming with the sharks. These are just people like the people you're looking at here, council members, county board members, school board members, union leadership, and they are nice to one another. So if any of you ever wants to run, obviously we have some people. I hope one of the people elected here stays on for a good long time in my Assembly seat, but when the time comes up, it's a job worth having. And what do all of these 80 Assembly members and 40 senators have in common? Huge amount of energy. I mean, you cannot do this job without being on 60 hours a week. And the other thing is they're crazy enough to run for election. And I must say, the negative literature I've seen, none of which, by the way, is coming from the candidates, but both for the Senate and Assembly, are coming from these independent expenditures, and they're a mess. I urge anyone who sees a negative mailer to just tear it up. The other thing I'm going to say about this is members sacrifice a lot to be up there. Most of them earn less money, and there is no pension. There are benefits that go to all state employees, which do not go, particularly pensions, to Assembly and Senate members because of some propositions that were back. But it's very tough on home life. There are many divorces because spouses don't want to see time, don't appreciate their spouses being gone. And then there are people in the Assembly who get lonely and start affairs. It's a difficult job. So while I'm saying many of you could do this, you got to think about the sacrifices. So it's time for me to move on. I'm going to be appointed as a senior fellow at Lawrence Berkeley Institute for Transportation Studies, where I'm going to be working on trying to reduce greenhouse gases, working with various agencies, particularly the Air Board that's going to do a lot of the regulations, as well as with the Assembly and Senate. And then I'm going to be a policy fellow at Stanford, where I spent 8 years in the Assembly on the tax committee, and I'm going to help them. They have a lot of good ideas on taxes, but no idea what the battles are going to be politically to get them done. So those are two areas where I expect to move on, to spend time, but I'm not going to have to wake up at 8 in the morning anymore, or sometimes 6 or 7. And I can do as much or as little as I want, which is why I'm leaving now. But again, it was a good time. We've got good people running to replace me. And just very happy to have done this and to have served these 10 years. And thank you very much for the commendation. And you are all my good friends. And I know, Sarah, you're going to be going on to work on the Recreation Board. Francisco is staying. Barbara, but you'll be involved in some things.
I'll be around.
You'll be around. And then we have the folks online.
I just want to clarify, Bill, that so that people don't get confused, that did not happen to you, the sacrificing home life. And you have an absolutely wonderful wife named Laurel, and I know that you're going to enjoy spending more time with her, right?
That's one of the main reasons I'm stopping this. Laurel has never been happy with my being gone 4 days a week, Sunday night to Thursday dinner time. So she's very happy to get me back. So again, thank you all very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for all of the service you have given us, not just for the last 10 years as an assembly member, but before that here in the city of Hayward. And I know that you have since moved out of the city of Hayward, but we still hope that you'll come back often and visit and be a part of things here.
We have a new mayor and new city council members coming on anytime. Thank you.
You hear that, other probable new mayor out there? He is attending
Yes.
on Zoom here, so.
I have a question, Mayor. I
Yes.
have a
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, Councilmember Zermania.
Anyway, thank you, Bill. Very pleased with what you did at City Council and also in Sacramento. I love reading that there's $1.1 billion for small businesses. And if you look at the back here in this room, those are small businesses on Tennyson Corridor. What can you recommend them about applying for these funds?
Best thing to do is to call my office, 510-583-8818. I got that right?
So
Okay.
also get a business card from them. And
Yeah, because each case is going to be a little different,
of course.
and we need to get all the details and then see what we can do.
Excellent. I thank you for that opportunity, and they'll be thankful too. So, thank you, Bill.
All right.
Well, thank you so much for coming tonight and spending this time with us and giving us this report and for everything that you've done. And we're glad that we had this opportunity to thank you formally and give you that nice proclamation.
Oh, yes, there we go. So call the district office, that number on the right, or send an email to Deborah Cox. And if you're calling, you will probably talk to Rosa, stand up Rosa. This is Rosa Rodriguez, or Karishma Katari, stand up. So, or Deborah. So thank you, who is retiring now from San Leandro City Council. So thank you all very much. We're in business through November, and then it's December 1. It'll be the new assembly member who probably won't have a lot of staff. So get to us in November if you can.
Okay, and actually, I have another, I see another hand up from our Zoom attendees, Councilmember Wahab.
Thank you. Park, I just wanted to thank you for your service, not only to the city of Hayward, but to this region and in the state as a whole. I will say to everybody that's listening, Bill has not only, had many conversations with me. I always like our conversations. One, whether we agree or disagree, we understand each other's perspectives. It's a true effort to kind of improve and learn a little bit about the issues that are coming up in our community. So I really just want to thank you, Bill. You've really shown efforts that you've pushed from the larger community. I know that many of them want to wish you well. And again, congratulations on your retirement. So thank you again.
Thank you, Aisha. And nobody should have to go through the kind of campaign we're having now for the Senate or Assembly. These IEs have been awful.
Yes, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I think that's it.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you. We really are glad to see you. So with that, we'll say to God, yes, don't forget that. Don't forget your. And so we're going to move on now to public comments for our meeting tonight. And this is your opportunity to speak on any items not otherwise on the agenda. I see, Mr. Drake, did you register with it? Would you like to make a public comment? Yes, come forward.
Yeah,
And
this-
welcome. We haven't seen you for a
Name
while.
Jim Drake or Harry James Drake. This is for Alicia. The city employees. I live over right behind the old Taco Bell on Harder. The city employee came around because there was a sign laying down. I went over and picked it up. It's one of those little ones. And I stepped on it and I pushed it into the ground. I said, she's got to be able to advertise or keep her signs up. Well, a city employee in a city vehicle comes along. He pulls it out and throws it in his car, and he went around the whole Jackson Triangle, taking all her signs down. And for the city to be doing that, it's wrong. It is totally wrong. Can you do something about it? Will you do something? Not can you. You got to watch the words they use here. Can you help me? Yeah, I can help you, but I'm not telling you I'm not going to. Will you help me? You got to make a commitment then. We need more police officers, more fire department guys. It's wrong what you guys are doing here. You're spending money, billions and millions of dollars, and it's wrong. I can't spend more than I make, and you're spending more than you make. And this over in the Ukraine, over there, I'd like to know how much that guy that's running that country, if he's a millionaire now or a billionaire. I'd like somebody to look into his finances to see how much money he's got. He's making a ton of money over there. People are donating more money and more money and more money. And a lot of it's going in his pocket. My brother was a mechanic on helicopters. I thought, well, he's a mechanic. He's down on the ground. He's safe. No, he was up in the air being a mechanic.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. Your time is up.
My time's up. Okay, but can you check on that?
We'll have somebody get in touch with you tomorrow about that. We do
Thank
have
you.
rules about signs, so, and people ask us to enforce them. So, with that, do we have anyone else who would like to speak? I don't have any, I'm not seeing any hands raised from Zoom attendees, and I'm not seeing. Would you come forward and state your name if you, there are a lot of people. You were supposed to register, I
My
don't.
apologies, Mayor. Are you able to see Mr. Jose Huitron on your screen? So
No.
he's next.
I'm not able to see the
Okay.
names on
All
my
right.
screen.
I'll go ahead
Sorry.
and
Did you put them in there?
yes.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jose, and I'm owner de Taquería El Pastorcito. My English that's not very good, but we come a lot of owner business to make complaint to the city because there's a lot of vendors in the street. They hearing us, We have to have the prices in the middle, and those people, the prices they have very low. And we come to the city to helping us. And a lot of homeless people in the streets too. Last week, somebody broke my window. Now I had to pay $5,000. And the business is very bad. Now how I have to do it? And the problem is a lot of people, you know, a lot of people in the streets, and a lot of vendors. I don't know they can help in us. We don't want the city come like Oakland. You know, in every stop, people doing drugs or selling food. That's why you have the business. So that's it. I don't know, maybe somebody else can talk better than me. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Yeah, Madam City Clerk, can you call the next person?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Next, we have Pepe. Please come forward. And I just wanted
Good afternoon.
Go ahead.
Am I on? All right. I would like to talk about unfair competition. Same issue with Jose. Street vendors, they're really hurting our business. There's too many things that I'd like to talk about. Permits. We pay a lot of permits. Health inspectors. When we receive the health inspector, they're checking us on all kinds of things, hot water, how do we keep the clean facilities and stuff. Street vendors doesn't do anything. They just cook out of their houses and sell on the streets, which is, I mean, that shouldn't be. I'm sorry. They block the streets while you walk. I've seen some vendors where they sell tamales, fruit, whatever. They just park on the street. Sometimes, a couple of times I see a handicapped man going around them because the street vendors are blocking the sidewalk. That's another issue for the city. And they leave dirty places, garbage, oil stains, all kinds of stuff, open fire. I have not seen any street vendor with an extinguisher on the side. Those are big issues, and but for the most part, it's unfair. We try to comply with a lot of stuff, ordinances, plastic bags, containers, disposable containers, and all the stuff, and they just do whatever. They use foam, they use plastic bags, which is, and they're not supposed to be allowed on Hayward. And that's pretty much the complaint that I have. You guys can do something about to control more of those vendors. And I mean, this has got to be something that we can work on, and because we're struggling. We pay a lot of taxes, a lot of workers' comp, a lot of things, and it's just hurting our businesses. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Jorge Flores. Please come forward.
Good afternoon. I'm Jorge Flores, Don Polvoron Bakery owner, and I'm here to speak for most of our established small businesses in Hayward. I'm going to read it because I will forget probably everything. We are here to seek the city's support in order to continue our business. We understand that COVID has brought us difficult times, and everyone had to find a way to survive. A lot of people started to sell food in the streets to produce some income for their families. However, COVID is basically over, and the street vendors are still appearing. This situation gives us a big disadvantage to all the established businesses in the fact that they don't have the same overhead. They don't pay any type of taxes, follow any regulations that we must follow. They don't follow any regulations as simple as hand washing or temperature control of their food. They don't follow any regulations to preserve earth because they use plastic, styrofoam, and other earth damage products. It's obvious they don't report any revenues, therefore they don't contribute to the city, and who knows, maybe some of them are asking for unemployment, a double cost for the city. Another consequence of the street vendor is the shortness of employees for us. People won't work for us or for a paycheck and pay taxes when they can make more money in the streets, which is a higher cost in our payroll. That obviously contributes to inflation. We all we want is fairness, and fairness, we had to contribute to this city for many, many years. Now all we want is your support, because without your support, we only have basically two choices. Either go bankruptcy or move to a different city where they will support us. I mean, we don't want to move. We love this city. We've been here for many years. But in my case, I had 17 employees. I had 17 families that depends on what I do. So the street vendors is not letting me do what I love to do. If I can find that in here, I had to find a way to support all these 17 families. I mean, we need your support. If you can give us the support, at least explain us what's the advantage of having street vendors. Like somebody else says, we don't want another Oakland in here. You know, there's no way. We love the city, we don't want another Oakland. Please help us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Aide Martinez, please come forward.
Hi, good night, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Heidi Martinez. I'm the owner of an ice cream shop in the Tennyson Road. It's called Don Gaspacho. So I'm just here to support all of my, my partners in small businesses, because I think that small businesses, we are a very important part of the economy, and we are very happy to be part of this, but we are very struggling with all of this stuff that is happening right now in the economy. First of all, I can say that we are surviving of this pandemic. A lot of small businesses closed, but we are survivors for this pandemic situation. And now we are surviving to these street vendors, which, as you guys hear already, this is not fair for us, that the street vendors are covering a lot of our clients and also our employees, because we are losing employees as well, as you hear, that they are paying in cash. We cannot, because we need to pay up the payroll, we need to cover all of these expenses that we are covering with ourselves, etc. So just we are here to call to your attention and asking you guys who can explain us what is the next step, or to understand why we can allow all of these street vendors to be around our business. Please, please take an opportunity in your time to analyze all of our situation, because our, like Pepe from El Polvorón, Don Polvorón is explaining, we are just, in the future, maybe we're just gonna have a couple options, close our business and go to the street as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
David Franco, please come forward.
Nice to meet you, Mayor. Nice to meet you, Councilman. First time I'm here in the City Hall of Hayward. My name is David Franco. I'm the owner of Taqueria Arandas, a long-time business in the city of Hayward, most in the Tennyson district. And I'm here also to support my friends, to express our concerns and worries about this increasing activity from the street vendors. We do, I personally appreciate the effort from the city of Hayward on helping, in my case, with grants to have improves, on the physical improves for the businesses. I believe there is a program right now going on, which I am benefit of that, and they're helping me. And I appreciate that. I understand that the city of Hayward is doing their best in order to make that particular area look better and nicer and cleaner. And if you, this is our first time here in the city of Hall, and we would just like to have conversations with the staff from the city of Hall. What can we do? Not also to help us, but also to help these people. Maybe we can relocate. Maybe you guys can help to relocate these people to a particular area so we can all have the same opportunity to work. Because I understand they're hard workers too. They work for a living. They're honest people. It's just that, in my opinion, they live like some kind of guidance or help from the city in order to have their businesses going on to a run too, like we do. Like my friend says, we have workers. In my case, I have families, depending on my business. And we're hard workers also. So we appreciate, Mayor, if you really try to help us on this matter. It's just that pretty much. It's our first meeting here, and hope to see you soon. Maybe we can bring whatever. We are here to open, to talk, to converse, what can we do in order to. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And the last speaker is Elena Lepe.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the time. I have a lot of members of the community. I help the community for support for resources. One person called me this week for the owner have a high bill for electricity. I give you support for referral for support for people. She only no have bills. The PG&E only have directly the owner charging the bill for rental. This month, all persons have 36 apartments. The owner is charge the rent and is charge their bill and not the rent. The issue that all members of the apartments is very frustration now. I refer support now. I find support for one lawyer for supporting. Yes, fine for you support for these families, 36 apartments. So this is the concern today for supporting families. I have El Puente Comunitario help support the families. I find it now for if it's possible give support for one lawyer for support this family. I give you 1 minute for other people who speaker that recently question.
Hello, my name is Nancy Munoz. So we're having issues with our property management. We're requesting our gas and electricity bill, and they're neglecting to give it to us. So now they're taking money away from our rent to pay for these, this bill that we're being charged. And they're also like threatening us because we're trying to collect like signatures. I mean, we don't know what to do, right? So we're trying to collect signatures, and they've threatened some people to like kick them out or like take their job away or something like that. And the woman who was trying to help us, she's closed her doors and doesn't want to do anything. She doesn't want to deal with it anymore. And yeah. Ya le dije que. Yeah.
Can you tell us where this property is?
It's on Cypress. They're managed by Tycon Management.
Okay.
Mayor, I have my business card here. What I would just suggest is tomorrow, why don't you give my office a call and we'll make sure that our housing manager reaches out. If there's someone who can act as a representative for the group or can explain the issues, we do have also a Spanish translation if that's needed.
Okay.
But please call my office and then we'll connect you with our housing staff who can at least help sort out what's allowed under city laws and what's not.
Because I think we've gone to City Hall and they gave us some paperwork and they told us to go to Eco Housing and call Eco Housing. I've been in contact with Eco Housing, so I don't know where to go from now.
Okay, I'll check in with our housing staff again.
We will get somebody to help you find out where you are now and how you can get to where you want to go. And I do thank you all for coming in. This isn't really the forum where we can sort all of that out, but we do want to help you. So she's going to give you her card to get in touch with her office, and we will definitely make sure somebody gets back to you who can
help us.
I hope so. I do
Okay.
hope so, really.
Okay, all righty then. Thank you.
All right, and we thank you for bringing this to us, but hopefully we can work it out. And if not, you come back and let us know.
Okay.
Okay? Were there any other speakers here? And I do see some on.
Not in the council chambers, but we have Zoom.
I can see them.
All right.
Suzanne on Zoom.
Hi, can you hear me?
Suzanne?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
I just want to say, listening to those restaurant owners, I really hope that the city can help them. Being a business owner in California is crazy. The licenses, the scrutiny, the everything that we have, all the hoops we have to jump through just to be in business. And to allow these street vendors, they're unlicensed, they're just running rampant. You can't do that to the businesses who are paying taxes and who are paying payroll and payroll taxes and conducting their businesses legitimately. I just really hope that some of you, take this project on because they really need some help. That's all. I just wanted to put in my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you can hear that, Suzanne, the applause in the room. Tom Ferreira?
Hello, Council. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Yeah, I wouldn't want to speak about our first person that was speaking at Council today about the signs. Yeah, I noticed that too. Some of my signs have been on private property on Hesperian and banners taken down, and it's all been since the ballots dropped on the 15th. So it's just very strange. I feel sorry for all the candidates that lost their signs as well. But this is the most I've ever seen. This is my third time running. So that's the most I've ever seen the signs being taken down so much. So just wanted to let you know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and we have Councilmember Zermeño.
Mayor, thank you, and Mayor, gracias por haber venido, los del apartamento, y gracias a los restauranteros ahí de la calle Tennyson. What I wanted to mention is that I have empathy for them because when we had our video store on Tennyson in Tampa, we were renting videos and DVDs. We had a couple of folks start selling videos outside our door. Of course, that's a no-no. So I went out, made an ugly face, threatened them, and they disappeared. But that's not something that I want you to do. Okay. What I think that we can do is, I believe that the city staff has now heard you correctly, and we certainly have. Mr. Franco's idea, by the way, I have eaten at every one of the restaurants. The tortas at Gazpacho's are the best. Taquitos over at Arandas are very, very good. But anyway, I can't go mention all of them. But I think that one good idea is to perhaps gather all these folks, as Mr. Franco mentioned, and see if we can find one location where they can sell their goods. And there, once there, maybe we can tell them no plastic, no styrofoam, etc. I don't know how difficult that would be. I don't know if it's viable, but I certainly think that we want to protect more of our brick and mortar businesses. And believe me, I have received many calls and emails from brick and mortar places on A Street, on Foothill, on Tennyson, on Harder, and from the folks on Home Depot even. And so it's something that we need to take care of. You know that there are people who want street vendors, that we know. Yes. But we also have, in my mind, a majority of folks who feel that they need to be regulated, or we need to do something to control that. Otherwise, pretty soon there will be a lot more street vendors. So I'm hoping that our city manager and our city attorney can start writing some notes down and seeing if we can work on something like this. And thank you for being here. Muchísimas gracias por estar aquí.
And Mayor and Council, I just want to, appreciate all the businesses who've come this evening, and also sorry, go ahead.
It's okay. I was going to ask you to speak too, and I do think all of us want to help you. I do have 2 more council members on Zoom here who want to make comments, and then I'll come back to you, okay? All right, thank you. Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming out in public comments. I'm not going to get into a deep conversation. It's very important that the public know that this is not an item that's on the agenda, so we cannot discuss it in detail. But I am going to ask the city manager to please speak on the fact that looking at policies around street vendors is on our list as one of the strategic initiatives. And if she could also briefly discuss why we were prohibited from doing anything during the shelter-in-place order. So if she could please just give that update, and then just let the public know that we are well aware of this issue and there are plans, unfortunately not as fast as you'd like it to be. We fully get that, but there are plans in the way to address these concerns. Thank you.
Yes, and we will have her speak. And Councilmember Wahab.
Yes, no, I appreciate all the business owners speaking about their problem. I also want to thank Councilmember Marquez. I do believe it is on our roadmap, number 1. And then number 2, I do just want to highlight that I've stated this in the past too, that if we can have a set location for them and maybe even create a theme of that, but away from the brick and mortar businesses, because as much as we want to help entrepreneurs kind of start their business, we also want to respect the current businesses. And I have always had a public health concern about this. So I really, when we bring it back to full discussion, I want us to actually talk about a couple of those things. So other than that, to our city manager, I know you're going to share your comments, so thank you.
Yes, thank you. And all of the council members have brought up good points. And especially that because this isn't an agendized item, we really can't have that full discussion. However, I think the city manager is hearing that several people on council have heard what you had to say. I think we've all noticed the proliferation recently, and we need to have an upcoming session on this as soon as we can get it scheduled. So I'll ask the city manager for her comments.
Thank you, Mayor, and again, thank you to all of the business owners who've been, and other staff who were here this evening. I do want to say that this is a little complicated based on some state laws that were passed recently that basically really limit cities' abilities to regulate street vendors and food vendors. There's still ability to regulate for health department regulations, but in an effort to improve access and to improve employment opportunities for all members of our communities, the state legislature passed laws that really limit what the city can do in terms of restrictions around food vendors and street vendors. So we do have it on the work plan. It is being actively worked on. I would highly encourage you, if you did not this evening, there's a ability to fill out a speaker card with your contact information. I also have some business cards. We would love to, as we outreach to businesses during the development of this ordinance, hear from you in terms of the problems you're experiencing and how we might address them. So I'll have some business cards that I can hand out. So please contact me, and we'll make sure you get on the contact list as our staff continues to work on this ordinance, so we can hear more about your specific concerns, and also just alert you when there'll be council discussions and meetings occurring about the ordinance development. So it is actively being worked on by staff, but probably won't come back to council until after the holidays, unfortunately, just given all the other things that are on the staff workload right now.
And do you have the contact information of the people who spoke about this evening?
No, Madam Mayor, but I will be out and I'll get that from them.
Okay, so before you leave, make sure that we have it so that we can get back to you on this issue. And we do have now one more public speaker on the list right now, and I don't have a name. It's a number ending in 615.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, hi. My name is Gabriel Altamirano, and I just want to make public comment regarding the vendors and the issues that were brought up by the business owners. And this is something that the business owners might want to note. And it was just briefly mentioned, the state laws that were adopted. Recently adopted in September was AB 626, which establishes regulatory structures for micro kitchens and vendor type businesses, which the city has the ability to adopt by ordinance and to regulate these businesses for health and safety purposes. And so I don't think I disagree with the person who made the comment that the city's hands are tied. Matter of fact, it's the opposite. The city has the ability to properly ensure that these vendors are abiding by health and safety codes. I know many community members who've eaten from these vendors and who've gotten sick. So you're taking a chance. I mean, a vast majority of the vendors of food is safe. However, there is that risk without the ability for the city to regulate the health and safety of the food. Some other bills that were passed is the SB 946, which is a sidewalk vending discrimination bill, which just says the cities local jurisdictions cannot discriminate against vendors. However, they can regulate for health and safety purposes. Also, AB 1616, which is the bill that permitted preparation of food in home kitchens for sale at retail level. So these bills, the business owners who got up and spoke, I would definitely look into those bills and advocate with the city to properly to encourage that the city regulate for health and safety purposes these vendors, because it would be unfortunate if somebody got sick or even died from eating food that's not regulated properly. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I don't see any other requests to speak, so I'm going to close public comments, but I do thank everyone for coming, and I do think we've all become somewhat aware, and so I hope that working together going forward, we can address some of these concerns. Thank you. So now we're going to move on to comments from our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to turn it quickly over to Deputy Police Chief Brian Matthews to make some comments about the officer-involved shooting that occurred on Monday morning. Just really tragic incident all around. My heart goes out to and sympathies go to the family who lost the individual who was involved in a chase that occurred through the community and ended up being shot and killed. My thoughts are also with our police officers who had to respond in that incident and to the 2 officers who were injured in the incident. So I'm going to let our deputy chief talk a little bit more and just share with the community what we know at this point and what the next steps are.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, City Manager McAdoo, and thank you, Mayor and Council, for the ability to share some preliminary information regarding yesterday's incident. We appreciate the community's patience as these investigations are still in their preliminary stages. As with any of these investigations, our understanding of what took place may evolve as we collect information, conduct interviews, and process evidence. So as we gather more information, we will share it. Just an overview of the incident yesterday, our officers responded to an address on Gary Drive just before 10 a.m. regarding reports of a domestic dispute involving a man with a gun. While officers were responding, witnesses saw and heard the man fire multiple rounds in the parking lot. I actually had a conversation with a dispatcher who was talking to the original caller, and she also heard the rounds being fired over the phone. The man fled the scene in a vehicle after reloading the gun, and moments later, the vehicle was located by our responding officers. They attempted a traffic stop, but the man fled and led officers on a pursuit into Castro Valley. At one point, the man drove onto the 580 freeway and got off the freeway using the Eden Canyon Road exit, where officers were able to perform what's called a pursuit intervention technique. This forced the man's vehicle into an embankment and effectively ended the pursuit. At that point, the man got out of his vehicle and ran away from the freeway and the officers on Eden Canyon Road with the gun in his hand. Officers chased him. They saw him point the gun at an uninvolved motorist, a woman who was apparently headed to work, in an apparent attempt to carjack her. And it was at that point that an officer intervened and the officer-involved shooting took place. Sadly, the man was taken to a local hospital where he was pronounced deceased. The woman in the vehicle was understandably shaken, but she was not injured. As the city manager mentioned, we had 2 of our officers who were injured during the pursuit intervention technique. They were treated at local hospitals for injuries and released. We actually had one officer who ended up being pinned between a couple of vehicles at one point. There was a loaded gun recovered from the scene. And as the investigation progressed after this incident took place, our officers learned that the same vehicle was involved in an attempted kidnapping and robbery in the city of Emeryville earlier that same morning, and a gun was also used in that incident. So in terms of next steps from an investigative standpoint, there are several investigations that are underway. Because this incident ended in Castro Valley, the Alameda County Sheriff's Office is the lead investigating agency, and they are conducting a criminal investigation into the actions of the man who was involved. The Alameda County District Attorney's Office is conducting a criminal investigation into the actions of the involved officers. An independent consulting firm made up of subject matter experts is conducting an administrative investigation into the actions of the officers to determine policy compliance, and they are on site and will be participating in some of the interviews that take place. And then per city policy, this incident will be referred to the California Department of Justice, Office of the Attorney General for review. Just want to assure the community that the Hayward Police Department is fully cooperating with all of these investigations and the involved agencies, and we will work to ensure that a thorough review is conducted. Again, as the city manager mentioned, this is a tragic event for all of those involved. This is certainly not an outcome that we ever want. And so our hearts go out to those involved, including the man and the officers and their families and friends. We recognize that this community entrusts us to carry out our duties, and we certainly do not take that responsibility lightly. And we will remain committed to transparency and release additional information, including the body-worn camera footage, as it becomes available. So again, I just want to thank you for your patience and understanding as these investigations progress. Thank you.
Thank you, and I just want to thank our officers for preventing further incidents from occurring as a result in trying to limit what happened in this circumstance. And again, thanks to the council for your patience as we continue to gather more information and share that with the community. Thank you, and thank you, Deputy Chief Matthews, for the update this evening.
And that's it. Okay. Yes, thank you for that report, and I'm sure I speak for my colleagues on the council that we also have the injured officers certainly in our thoughts and wish the best for them. That brings us to our consent calendar this evening. That would consist of items 1 through 10. Is there anyone who has asked to pull that off from the public, Madam City Clerk, or any council members who, I do see a hand raised among attendees. So,
I haven't received any requests to speak, but I see someone.
yes, why don't we call upon TJ and see if she wants to pull one of these items off the agenda?
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to speak to item 10.
Okay, so we'll come back to that.
Okay.
Would that be okay? I'll just make a comment, and then we'll go ahead and vote on all of the items together. Okay, go ahead and make your comment, TJ.
Okay, all right, yeah, so it seems a lot of our group is represented tonight here. I'm TJ with Hayward Concerned Citizens. So on behalf of our group, I wanted to acknowledge the police building finally getting some paint retouching and carpeting. So far, there's been a seismic retrofit assessment for a restructure years ago, roof patching, then a new roof, plus a locker room with a breastfeeding area. But why stop there? You're giving out these little bones and Band-Aids rather than addressing the elephant in the room. Hayward PD is in need of a new building. The current building is from the 70s. They've outgrown their space for staff and technology, and they have a bunch of tough sheds outside for their supplies, and they have a broken public phone outside the building. In the meantime, there's been a great new fire station built, at least 3 city halls, and tonight I see on the consent calendar, up to $199,000 approved for a bathroom remodel on your 1997 City Hall building. The police are overextended, but they do their best to protect and serve every day, such as Deputy Chief Matthews shared tonight. Let's dream bigger, and instead of all the little patches, let's get plans for a new state-of-the-art building on council's agenda, at least in my lifetime. Thanks, and have a good night.
Thank you. So with that, no other requests to pull items off. I will take a motion on items 1 through 10.
I'll move the items. Mayor, this is Marquez.
Okay. And seconded by Councilmember Lamnon. On the motion, Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews, absent. Councilmember Lamnon. Aye. Councilmember Marquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas.
Yes.
Councilmember Wahab.
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño.
Sí.
Mayor Halliday.
Yes, and the motion carries with 6 aye votes and 1 member absent. The motion was by Councilmember Marquez, seconded by Councilmember Lamnon. Great. Now, we will now move on to item number 11 on our agenda, and that is a work session on the Hayward Food Action Plan. We're being asked to provide input on the Hayward Food Action Plan scope and timeline. And we're going to start this off with City Manager McAdoo.
Yes, and I am actually going to quickly turn it over to two staff from our office, our management analyst, Mary Thomas, who I think most of you know. And I also want to take this opportunity to introduce Emily Huang, who is our management fellow working with us this year. We are pleased to welcome her. She finished up her master's degree from Carnegie Mellon. I'm going to do a poor job of introducing her because I don't have her bio in front of me, but I think she's met a number of you. And we're happy to have her join us in the city manager's office for at least the next year, working on some special projects and learning about future career in local government. So I think we'll start with with Mary, and then go from there. So I'll turn it over to Mary.
Great, thank you so much, Jan. Emily's awesome, and I'm glad that you're all getting to meet her tonight. I'm gonna share the PowerPoint. 1 second here. And are you all seeing that?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Okay. So yeah, we're here tonight. We'll be brief. The intention of this work session is to give you an overview of what we're going to be doing over the next 5 months. So we did this is responsive to a strategic roadmap project that council ranked highly last February, which is increasing the circular food economy as part of your environmental goals, as well as you joined the All On Eats initiative last year. So this is, we're coming back with you with this. We got a grant from the Stepsy Foundation to do some planning around looking into the food systems in Hayward, particularly around food access and career pathways. In addition, we met a lot of different partners during COVID-19 when the city stood up a food distribution site, and many expressed a need kind of for a community plan to think through the increased demand for food distribution services. So our role is really to convene partners to develop a list of action steps. We're not intending for the city to be the implementer of all these actions, but that the city will convene the partners and then help them develop this action list that they could use to take to funders. So I'm going to now introduce, Kelly already did. Thanks, Kelly. So Emily's going to take it from here.
Thanks so much, Mary, and thank you everyone for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm really excited to be here. So as you can see, this is our partner list. Starting in August, Mary and I met with over 30 partners, most of whom are on this list, to gauge the interest in participating in a Hayward specific food action plan. The response from partners was of high interest, which encouraged us to move forward with this project. And the way that this list was originated was from Mary's experience working and living in Hayward, and also was further developed by recommendations from partners that we were meeting with, as well as council. Of course, we continue to get emails about people who are interested, and we are open to including anyone who would like to be involved in this plan. Next slide, please.
Sorry, 1 second. My computer seems to have frozen. I'm going to stop sharing for a second and reshare. Okay. There you go.
Lovely. Okay, so here's our timeline for developing the Hayward Food Action Plan. As you can see, we are here with the council work session being in October, but earlier this month we had a kickoff at the beginning of October with over 30 attendees to meet one another and introduce the plan and the plan's details for the Hayward Food Action Plan. In November, aka next week, we're gonna have our first working group sessions with that I'll further talk about in the next slide. From January to March, we plan to do data collection that I can talk about later as well. In January, we were offered the opportunity to go to Santa Cruz Center for Agroecology for a planning retreat, if that's something partners are interested in. And of course, we're going to bring along speakers that may be inspiring to partners. We'd also like to plan site visits for partners to be able to explore different ways and models that they could see as being helpful to them. In March, we plan to have a draft action plan that we'll bring to the group for a review, and then April we'll finalize that action plan, with ultimately the deliverable being an action plan that we can present to potential funders as well as council to just get a general sense of what's going on the ground. And we see the value of this plan as a way to help Hayward as a community to articulate what top assets and service gaps are so that our partners can approach future funders in future implementation. Next slide, please. All right, so here we have the working group topics as well as the objectives. During the process of this grant, partners will choose which working groups most align with their interests. They will participate in a series of sessions where they will conduct asset mapping, define target audience, identify known and unknown gaps in service, with the ultimate goal of developing recommended near-term steps that we will disseminate into the action plan. This process is meant to be flexible based on the interest of each working group and what they decide is most important to their topic. And the topics came about based on the partners that are involved and interested in this food action plan. And these include food access and security, career pathways and entrepreneurship, culture, heritage, and community wellness, and then lastly, food recovery specific to Hayward. Next slide. And we hope to utilize this planning grant funds to best engage the community for a local vision. This includes community interviewing and surveying. We hope to work with community partners to create sub-grants so that they can work with their staff and reach out to their clients and the people that they know on the ground. And we've talked with partners that already have surveying practices in place and that we could potentially survey and tack on some questions to get a better, to be better informed on food issues in Hayward, as well as peer-to-peer interviewing. Like I said in the timeline slide, we'd like to invite speakers that are relevant to the working groups. We'd like to bring partners to site visits if they find that to be helpful, and we are open to planning a retreat as well. We also have the opportunity to be able, as well as interest, to be able to bring in interns, whether that's student interns or community member interns, to be able to support this plan via community engagement, or also helping to plan this process, because it's all hands on deck. So now that we've discussed the scope timeline and how we plan to utilize this grant's funding, Mary's going to discuss our initial findings from our initial meetings with our partners.
Thanks. Yeah. So we met, as Emily mentioned, we met with about 30 partners so far individually. So this is not intended to be a comprehensive list. You'll be getting more data when we come back in April, but we just wanted to share with you at the onset just some things that we heard and some data that we heard from different partners. So we did see a study from 2017. It has been updated, but I haven't gotten the data from the food bank yet, to 2019, where depending on the census tract, up to 20% of residents are considered food insecure in Hayward, and up to 14% are marginally food insecure. The 2021 HPN Hayward Promise Neighborhood Survey found that for 61% of the families they talked to, food access was their top concern, getting enough food for their families. And that was particular to South Hayward. I think some of us have seen, I think this has been mentioned before, a 2016 Cal State East Bay survey that shows that almost 70% of their students indicate being food insecure. It's a huge number. In addition, the numbers for CalFresh for Hayward are 12.1%. That's higher than the county average, which is about 9.6%. Though I wanted to point out that the average cost of a meal in this area in Alameda County is 52% higher than the benefits for that meal. So it doesn't the CalFresh does not cover all the meals that you need. In addition, somewhere around 45% of people who are food insecure in Alameda County do not income qualify for CalFresh because the income qualification is based on national poverty levels, not local. So there's a lot of need, basically. And then finally, our service providers are really noting an increase in demand. All the ones we've talked to so far have noticed almost a doubling or tripling in the last 12 months. So we're not totally, just an initial, conversations, not totally clear why that is happening at this point, but it's not like COVID has ended and demand is going down. We're actually seeing a demand increasing. So there's a lot of questions about that. And in addition, a fairly notable change in demographics, particularly seeing more people from Asian communities using their services than they had in the past. And so there's a need for some language services. These are our assets and our challenges we'll do that for each area. So we have a lot of different providers. This map here is the food bank agency network. So most of our providers, or all of our providers, pretty much are getting their food from the food bank, which gets their funding through the county. And so we'll reach out to all the different food bank network in Hayward, but in particular right now we're working with South Hayward Parish / First Pres, Glad Tidings, Eden United Church, which serves a lot of North Hayward residents, and Tiburcio Vasquez. Challenges, there is a funding cliff coming for these agencies around, they've been using special COVID relief funding for a lot of this food distribution. And so that's going to dry up in the next 12 months here. And so we'll report in April some more information for you guys about just what that might look like for these agencies. While funding is drying up, we know that there's a lot of marginally food insecure households in Hayward that don't qualify for benefits. And so kind of this question mark of where they're going to be able to get support. All of the providers we talked to so far have mentioned a gap in culturally appropriate food. So they're finding that the food they get from the food bank, some of it is left, like no one takes it, and it's then sort of food waste, and then there's other items that disappear immediately. So some discussions about how can we increase choice or culturally appropriate offerings, and then finally language access. So moving on to the next topic the sort of categories is career pathway and entrepreneurship. And that was a big, that came up tonight around entrepreneurship around food businesses. So we have some great assets in Hayward that, are opportunities. I think all of them realize that they could grow, and some of the different leaders here have good ideas. But the Tennyson High School, right before COVID, launched their sort of specific science program, their farm to fork pathway. Each of the high schools in Hayward now has one of these pathways. So Tennyson's is the farm to fork. Eden area ROP has a pretty fantastic culinary pathway. If you haven't been able to tour their facility, it's pretty impressive. Chabot College does not, they used to, I believe, but they do no longer have a culinary pathway. So there's sort of this gap at the junior college level, but they are very interested in looking into that. Maybe, looking into a way to sort of bridge the ROP culinary pathway up to the CSU East Bay's hospitality program. So they're excited that we're, convening partners to talk about that. And then the Dig Deep commercial kitchen, I think you guys, we brought that to council. There'll be an incubator program coming to South Hayward in the next bit here. And then finally, some council members have mentioned Central Community Partners that supports entrepreneurs. So they're engaged with this process now too. The challenges in this category is that there's little to no capacity for these existing staffs to develop cohesive curriculums across agencies. So they're grateful that we're going to sort of take a first stab at it here, but they're going to need more capacity moving forward. And then as came up tonight, we know that food street vendors are a big area of concern in the city right now. And so we also know that there's been a lot of interest from councils and others of helping people become licensed. There aren't currently a lot of programs. We did some research to help people do that, but there's a desire amongst partners to maybe figure out some ways to help. So I'm going to pass it over to Emily for the next one.
Thank you, Mary. And the next topic that we can talk about is cultural heritage and community wellness. Assets in that realm include the Hayward Community Gardens that are managed by HARD with 70 garden plots to rent, as well as the UC Master Gardener Program of Alameda County, having a successful program to certify community members and volunteers to provide trainings and demonstrations. They also have a demonstration garden at Hayward, the Hayward Garden. To add to that, there's the Hayward Public Library, Seed Lending Library, and Seed Savers Club, where they just relaunched programming after, amidst lockdown. There's also Forest Org, who they're providing innovative planning to activate public services in Castro Valley as well as North Hayward. They also are working with Hazel Community Garden as part of the People's Budget Project. And also lastly here on this slide is UC Cooperative Extension Urban Agriculture Mapping Tool. They just launched that this month to identify existing urban farms and gardens. And with those exciting assets that we have also comes with challenges. The primary challenge identified by providers is in the lack of capacity and funding, as all partners enthusiastically recognize that multicultural funding of programming, as well as the act of growing food is a lovely thing, but no agency currently has the resources to spend to expand those offerings, and they're also relatively limited in Hayward compared to neighboring jurisdictions. Also, the loss of Project EAT, formerly run by Alameda County Office of Education, which provided services to the Hayward schools and lost funding over the past several years and has left a gap in as well as underused garden beds across the city. For community members looking to grow on and steward lands, there has been question of how to access lands to grow their foods and keep cultural practices alive. And then lastly here, offering all this programming and also meeting different language backgrounds takes additional resources. The last topic that we'll talk about today is food recovery in Hayward. The Alameda County Food Recovery Network, run by Stop Waste, includes several food recovery organizations and services throughout the county and in Hayward. They have compiled resources and even created a reporting portal to assist with the implementation of SB 1383, the state's landfill waste reduction mandate. Stop Waste has made plans to create a mapping tool to connect food generators as well as food recovery organizations. To add to that, the city's environmental services division has been making moves towards SB 1383, and with the help of Stop Waste, staff is working to establish partnerships for compost hubs across the city, and is even having a compost giveaway on November 5th. To talk about the challenges around food recovery in Hayward, there isn't a centralized model to connect food generators and agencies that need food. While there are different apps out there, there isn't an agreed upon form of technology that everyone is using to be able to share that information that you sort of need, that's sort of time sensitive. And with the compost and mulch procurement, the city of Hayward has to procure 12.5 thousand tons annually. So as you can imagine, that is a big lift. But yes, they're making moves to establish compost hubs and partnerships to work towards that. And to reiterate, this is only the beginning of what we know, which has been informed by what we've heard from partners in our initial meetings. The next few months, we will be able to dive deeper into understanding these topics more. which leads us to our next steps. Next week, we're going to have our first work group sessions of all the 4 different topics. Those work group sessions will define goals and objectives of each working group. There's going to be data collection phase that will run from January to March, and that will be defined by the working group topics and how they would like to perform that. Staff will return to council with updates in the new year as we get more information. And then lastly, staff will present the final Hayward Food Action Plan to council and any other interested boards in April 2023. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation. As a reminder for work sessions, we're going to take public comments first and then go to council questions and time for discussion. Thank you.
Yeah. And I will say, thanks so much, Emily. And I will finish by saying that I think for council discussion tonight will be really useful for me and Emily is knowing if there's particular data that you think that we need to be collecting or information that you need to hear more about in order to make decisions when we come back to you, let us know tonight so that we can focus our efforts there.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open public comment. However, we had quite a few people in here earlier and they've all left, and many of them were interested in food too, but and I don't see any hands raised among attendees, Madam City Clerk. So I'm going to go.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I'm not aware of anyone wishing to speak.
All right, raise your hand now or, okay. So with that, we'll close public comment. I'm sure if we had food to offer people, maybe we would have more people here in the chambers now. So we'll go right to our, let's see. So I think I'll start on Zoom tonight. Okay, so we will go to Council Member Salinas first.
Thank you, and welcome aboard, Ms. Huang. I appreciate it. Thanks for the presentation. As you know, as many of you know, I've been in this space for a long time, and been thinking about this for a long time, and I'm just going to focus my comments on food access and security because 2, 3, and 4, I think those are great pillars in your framework, and I think a lot of agencies, a lot of schools, a lot of colleges and universities, I think they're working on this. They've certainly built curriculum around this, and but I think you've whittled it down to a nice point of one of the challenges is funding, right? Is sustainable funding, that carries it year to year, and then of course. COVID goes without saying. COVID just changed the whole food game, just 100%. And so anyway, so I what I want to do is I just want to focus on the food access and security because the need for food is just so great right now, and we're seeing the need for food just spike exponentially. But just some thoughts on the food access stuff is, one observation I've made over the years is you have all these organizations doing great work in this area, and that's great. And I think we're and they're asking for money and they get funding and and they're all over the city and so forth, and which is great. But if COVID taught us anything. One thing that is a takeaway is it'd be nice to have one site where we can sort of designate as a place. Some cities have athletic fields. We don't have that. Some cities have, these huge, Southland sized parking lots. We don't have that either. But, but it's identifying a place that where we can, distribute food, and so I think that's always because you have all these different agencies distributing food in spaces that they absolutely or in spaces that are not made for food distribution. I mean, the Westminster Church. I mean, God bless those guys, but they almost shut down Patrick Avenue, to do what they need to do. And I mean, and it's, when you drive by it, when they have their distributions, I mean, it's orderly and it's, but it just looks crowded, and, you have cars lined up and snaking through the neighborhoods. And so anyways, my point is that, it'd be nice to sort of invest in one site possibly where, we find an agency that could come in and, and really put together a good, strong model, or have different agencies take over different days or different times. I don't know. But another big challenge that I see in the food access and security is, once food is procured, it's food storage. It's storing food. It's, and I don't know, I mean, I've thought about, having refrigerator containers, but in order to have a refrigerator container, you have to park it somewhere, right? And so, I was in conversation with Hard at a food distribution that, I help organize, and they raise a good point in that, because I talked about a container, having a container where we can store materials, store food, and if possible, have a refrigerated container. And while Hard is a terrific partner, and Hard they've really done some extraordinary work, they're also concerned of, dropping containers at all the, all over the parks and all over the place. And they become, spots for vandalism and people, and then we have to maintain them. Anyways, but so the challenge is storage. Where do we store, food? Because the way it works now is when the food bank, I mean, that's where most of the food distributions get their food. We all get it from the food bank, right? And what happens is the food bank, when they come and drop off food, we always have to guesstimate accurately how much food we're going to distribute. Some days we're really good and we hit our target number. Some days we're not so good because we have a lot of leftover. We overestimate, and so it's figuring out food storage, and I think that's a big challenge. And then of course I know I put one site, but I put distribution site. Finding a place. And, I thought about, as you were talking, I was trying to think of that one place. And one place I was thinking, and I mean, it's not being used right now. And it's sort of off the main road, it's off a foothill. But, and there's a lot of space, and that's the old parking lot at Civic Center, at the old City Hall. That's a huge parking lot, and it, cars can pull in and kind of snake through, maybe go to the top, pick up food, and we can sort of, in an orderly way, bring them out. But anyways, that might be worth a field trip just to take a look at it. I'm not saying we need to go there, but just to kind of take a look at it and see if it's feasible, because we can also park a container over there and and so forth. But I think the framework you have is great, I just wanted to, of course, longtime partners, I should say, have always been the UC Davis, the School of Agriculture. They've been great partners over the years, with not only with doing food activities at the neighborhood level at parks and stuff, and partnering with other organizations, but they do great curriculum development. They have great expert professional nutritionists that come out, and they're all from Hayward. They hire locally, and their outpost is the County Office of Ed. And so forth. So I think some of the assets is that we have a large brain trust around town both at the research level and at sort of the knowledge generation level. And then we also have a big brain trust when it comes to sort of, figuring out logistics and, and figuring out what are the most effective and efficient ways to connect people to food. So anyways, I think these are great guideposts, and I'll look forward to what you guys come up with. And one last thing as I'm saying this is that a lot of the organizations, when it comes to food access and security, a lot of the organizations that are doing food work or doing work in the food area, over the years, they've had to adjust their mission, right? I mean, like the Hayward Promise neighborhood. I mean, I work for the Hayward Promise neighborhood. We didn't start out as a food distribution, or, our mission doesn't include food distribution. We do have a solution that sort of talks about, having healthy communities for kids and families. But what we designed and implemented may or may not have been partnering with the food bank and doing a food distribution, once a month, and so forth. It's a lot of work, and it takes a lot of volunteers, and, it's a big logistical operation that's done. And so a lot of organizations doing food work don't necessarily start out doing food work, but over the years they've adjusted, and they've now adopted this new model in their mission. So anyways, I'll be. This is neat. I'm glad you guys are working on this. Looks like you certainly are on the right path, and I'll look forward to the check-ins as time comes. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you. We'll go back to chambers here, and Council Members Armeno.
Mayor, thank you, and thank you, Mary and Emily, and welcome to the family, Emily. Very good report. Food action plan is something that's certainly needed. Over at Chabot College, I was walking to my bicycle, and I saw a couple of guys picking figs from a fig tree that I planted there. And I said, so how are you guys doing? We haven't eaten all day. Is it okay if we eat some figs? And by all means. So one of the things that's missing on your plan is planting fruit trees. I know that cities don't like to, Hayward has told me, don't do it, Francisco, because liability, people are going to slip and slide all over the sidewalk. Well, what can happen, as I've done, I planted 6 fruit trees at South Hayward Parish and 6 over at Chabot, away from the sidewalk. So the drop fruit does not cause any slipping, sliding, and a possible lawsuit. Quite a few of the cities in the United States are also beginning to do this because they see the benefits, not only trees, but also being able to feed those who are hungry, whether they are unhoused or whether they are kids or whatever. And just today in the news, it was reported that the U.S. government has promised to plant 1 billion trees per year in the United States. So ask me if I'm happy. Anyway, so I recommend that you include planting fruit trees in certain areas. And some areas that could work for non-slipping and liability issues are railroad track intersections with Tennyson, with B Street, with A Street, not right visibly so that there is not a chance for anybody to build some kind of a hut or something. And then I think that the other thing that you also need to look into is the expansion of the school farms. At the moment we have Tennyson. Let's take that program at Tennyson and expand it to all the other high schools and even middle schools, because that's another possibility. Trees, fruit trees. I like the fact that you'll be speaking with the community. I think that's excellent. The 4 categories are very, very good. just the engagement with the community is fantastic. Okay, just one. I have one minor question. Before my question, it's page 7 of 8 says good on how to best engage the community. Again, community transparency. That's community input. That's excellent. My one question is, you speak of, the report speaks of culturally appropriate food. I'm not sure I know what that is. Could you explain that to me, please?
Yeah, and Emily, feel free to jump in if I miss something. But basically what we're hearing is that as there may have been certain types of beans, for example, or specifically beans and grains, I think are the main ones that are coming up, where they may be good staples for some communities in Hayward, but then they've seen a lot more diversity, in particular with different Asian immigrant groups coming in and not eating or used to being eating or knowing how to prepare the same grains and legumes as other groups. So they're, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Did that answer your question?
Not quite. I guess I was trying. My first thought was it's being culturally profiling. You know, like Mexicans only beans or tortillas, but I guess it's not that.
It's what people's preference is as they're coming in, but it's not. And I think saying preference maybe is diminishing it. It's what people are able to go home and cook and know how to cook and know how to use for their family.
Okay, I have participated in several food giveaways, and the people obtaining the food come in all shapes and sizes and faces, and the food given to them is exactly the same. So that I think needs to continue, and that's a very good process. And thank you again, and let's keep this up. It's going to be a good program once it's finished. So thanks, and if you need help, you let me know, please. If you want to plant some fruit trees with me, let me know.
I am assuming that Humanity for Trees, which was listed as one of the organizations that you're working with. At first I saw that and I said, what does that have to do with food? But of course I thought about, oh yes, fruit trees. So good to bring that up. Okay, so we're going to go back to Zoom and go to Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I also want to welcome Emily. You did an excellent job. It's great to have you on board. This was extremely comprehensive. I know this is just a first kind of look at this, but I just want to thank staff for meeting with all the community partners. It's very comprehensive. I agree with the four categories that we're going to be focusing on. Obviously, we heard a lot about career pathways tonight and entrepreneurship opportunities. So that is something that I'm going to be very interested in, how we bring that forward along with our other strategic roadmap initiatives to get to the issue of food scarcity, but also address some of the concerns that we heard earlier tonight. A couple of things that I didn't hear that I would just be curious, and I don't know the answer to this. I don't know if staff has this, but I know at one point, if you received SSI benefits through Social Security, you were ineligible for food stamps. CalFresh, I believe, is what we're calling it nowadays. Is that still the case, or was there legislation that was changed, like maybe right before COVID? Do you happen to know by any chance?
Emily, do you know? I do not know the answer to that, but we can definitely get you that response and email you kind of who's eligible and who's ineligible for.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know exactly, but I think that would determine the income levels. Like if depending on how much money you're making, and if you're making or you're getting SSI. On top of that, it would just depend on the individual. But yeah, happy to follow up on that.
If you could please, just because I remember when I used to do case management over 10 years ago, there was this notion that the food allowance was built in and SSI was already really, really low level. I don't know if that's still the case, but the reason why I'm bringing it up is I'm also just wondering if this initiative is something that we should be bringing up to our state and federal lobbyists. There was mention in the staff report that our income guidelines are parallel with federal, even though the cost of living is significantly higher in the Bay Area and California. So I'm just also wondering if there's a way that we can advocate on the state and federal level to make some modifications. Maybe it should be a regional approach versus, just everyone going off the same metrics. It seems really, really unfair to populations that need food and obviously are not being able to qualify. It's unfortunate to hear that some of the funding has been cut from the Board of Education. I forgot the name of the program, but the Project Eats, I think it was. When I recently volunteered at Tyrell Elementary School, they mentioned like a health club. So I don't know if schools are being creative and trying to, replace some of that funding. I'm sure there's staff that have expertise. And the only reason I bring that up is I do think that that is a gap that maybe if we partner with the school districts and we find out which schools have capacity to do some growing of fruits and vegetables and some education to the students, we know very well that they're going to pass that information on to their parents. So just finding a way to kind of spread that information. I'm also concerned, I don't know. Go ahead.
I wanted to add to that point. I had a meeting with Eric, Environmental Services Director, and they had just brought on 2 Climate Corps fellows, and they're working to bring in more green teams. There's a green team at Tennyson High, and they're hoping to establish more green teams across different high schools.
That's great. That's good to hear. And then also just on the issue of SB 1383, volunteering at different food distribution sites, going to Weeks Park last Friday. Unfortunately, it's not always the case, but there does tend to be some waste. These food boxes, whether you're a family of 4, 10, or an individual, you tend to get the same quantity. And we often find in our local parks and areas that food's just, being thrown or left out in the sun to get spoiled. So just if there's any way moving forward that there could be, kind of sizing depending on the family size in terms of the quantity of food that people get. Or I know it slows down the line, but also if you don't need this stuff, don't accept it. If there's a way to return it on site so somebody else can actually benefit from the use of that food. And then in terms of culturally appropriate food, I'm wondering if our community partners can help us with doing a survey with their clients and just finding out what are like the top 7 to 10 items that would be considered a staple and what would best meet the needs of the different demographics to make sure that the food bank is getting those items in their inventory. But I think that's all my kind of commentary from now. I'm excited about this work and look forward to the updates. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to Chambers, and we'll go to Councilmember Lamnon.
Thank you. And yes, I add my appreciation to both of you for this great work. Super excited about it. Just a few things to think about now. Obviously, there's lots to talk about in this all the time, but I'll try and contain my enthusiasm. So, question about, is there a thought about talking with the Youth Commission or the Community Services Commission as part of this process, or would they be invited to the council work session? What's the thought there?
We hadn't really thought about it, but we can do that. I think we can give an informational report to them, and then if they want to have us come and speak, that would totally work. Okay. So good suggestion.
I appreciate that, and certainly, thinking about the Youth Commission in terms of the interns potential, including the and I know there's great history of working with Chabot students as well. And then I wanted to echo Councilmember Marquez's comments about legislation. I think, I had the Social Security no food benefit question as well. And also there was during the pandemic, there was the student food stamp program, which I think may have gone away, but was a huge need for a number of our students. And just, as to your question about research and data, and if there is capacity within the grant to have people looking into what are some legislative asks that would change the equation for some of these folks. Those two, and also one other one, but I'll find it in a minute. Oh, the other one is green credits. So, there is funding for carbon capture, cap and trade funding, et cetera. And so I wonder if that dovetails with obviously our climate action plan goals, but also that, genuine, if somebody's paying an offset, can that actually pay for the fruit trees here in our community and the people to care for them? One of the things so it's a research potential. The other one is the county is working through a good food purchasing policy. And while that hasn't been fully implemented yet, the idea that people are already buying all kinds of things, what would it look like to grow those locally, to have that purchased locally so that we're keeping the money local and hopefully creating more economic opportunity as well. And then lastly, on the cohesive curriculum, I'm appreciating that that's there. One of the things I've heard from some of our schools is there are teachers who are passionate about gardening, but it's not their core curricula thing. They're math teachers or they're, whatever, and they've found bits and pieces of time to do gardening, but there isn't a cohesive curriculum across the district. There isn't the support time, the professional development time to both have that be an ongoing thing as opposed to one person's passion, but also to teach other teachers how to integrate. If a math teacher happens to know about gardening, then they might teach cooking to their students because it's a great way to practice math skills. But somebody else may not have that same hands-on learning opportunity in their classroom. And so I'm excited to hear about the career pathways at all the different educational institutions in this community. And I wonder if that then leads to the opportunity for, high school students to come back to elementary schools and do some of that teaching and learning, et cetera. And, as we talk about culturally appropriate food, are there some of those staples, those, 5-6 staple crops that feel like food and everybody knows how to grow or how to prepare? Can we grow them at our school sites? I don't know, but this is the start of many, many fantastic conversations, and I thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you. And let's see, back to Zoom and Councilmember Wahab.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you to Emily. I appreciate you coming on board. And kudos to Mary for always presenting this with kind of a equity lens. A couple of things I wanted to say. Number one, I think all the commentary about what is wrong with our system is absolutely correct. And obviously it's going to take time to fix any of that. I've received a lot of emails in the last week and a half or so, specifically from Hayward residents that are talking about food security. Granted, we have some problems in our south side of Hayward with people looking for a healthier food option to buy food or get food, number one. They also referenced, in one of the emails referenced Chabot during COVID, they were handing out food, but then that stopped. And they weren't directed to any other location, right? So I just want to kind of put it on your radar, if you will. And then I also did not really see anything in this discussion talking about Spectrum. Spectrum is a nonprofit based out here in Hayward, largely gives free food. And I want all our viewers and listeners to hear this: free food to anybody, I want to say roughly 60 and up. I don't even think the age is the biggest impact, but basically seniors. These are not only freshly cooked every day, these are hot foods, roughly 3 times a day, even potentially more for cooking and so forth. So I really want to also not reinvent the wheel. I say this in a lot of our council meetings, right? We need to partner with the agencies we have that are actually the experts of this. Spectrum, for example, I did a tour of it. They also have emergency meal plans, right? Where, God forbid a disaster happens in one of our neighborhoods, whether it's an earthquake, flooding, whatever, they have food available, kind of like emergency kits, if you will. I think that we need to also partner with them. And then we have our local food banks, obviously very important, but for example, our neighboring, Davis Street Family Resource Center out in San Leandro, large food bank. We need to be able to advertise this more, besides tackling, the food deserts that we have and so forth. I also want to highlight, and I've brought this up in, I want to say previous meetings, but our hilly areas, very difficult for our elderly to go up and down. They are limited in mobility. They may be able to walk, but they may not drive any longer, right? So just being able to kind of partner with a group, and for example, Spectrum has a Meals on Wheels program too. They do drive food out there. Again, they deal with all the logistics and paperwork in regards to how much they're receiving, what they're giving. Again, very healthy, low sodium, things like that, especially for a senior population. And then when you said culturally competent, I actually do appreciate that. I think to your point, Ms. Thomas, you were giving an example. I think it also goes into, for example, a lot of the Muslim community does not eat pork. A lot of the Jewish community do not eat pork. A lot of the Indian community members don't eat meat, right? Or certain types of meat, right? So that's, I think, what we're talking about culturally competent when we're talking about this, right? And then really highlighting also the fact that we need to kind of, the waste piece is a big part of it, right? So we have these grocery stores, we have these ethnic food stores and so forth. But what are they doing with the pounds of waste that they do produce, whether it's canned foods, whether it's fresh foods and things like that? So we have a Salvation Army as well, and a lot of the different church groups that also give out food. So I think that we just need to partner a little bit more, and that creating a strategic plan around that, and moving that forward as well. I also think one of the problems that we do have, a lot of the forms, when we talk about digital divide, a lot of people need to sign up online. They can't do it. Cultural competency also applies to language barriers, right? So we have multiple different language groups. I do think that we need to reach out to the faith centers. So the churches are doing a great job in Hayward, providing food, things like that. South Hayward Parish, but we also need to reach out to the Seek Good Water that gives out food every weekend, pretty much free food, as well as the 5 mosques in Hayward. I think that we haven't really built that community infrastructure and being able to at least hit our bigger communities through their own networks. I think that's one of our biggest gaps that I see. We need to strengthen that relationship, because God forbid there be an earthquake or a flood or anything like that. Those are the groups that most people tend to reach out to. And we saw that gap during COVID when the Asian community was not getting their vaccine. How do we reach out to them? How do we communicate in their own language or meet them where they're at? So I have not seen that yet here. I think that your presentation is, kind of, let's say, the catalyst to potentially develop those relationships. Number one, develop the infrastructure there, and then also have some of our different community agencies, whether it's our PD, our fire department, things like that, also be able to piggyback off of those relationships once we talk about a food security group in that sense. So I think those are very, very important. And then we have these large nonprofit regional groups, right? So for example, the Tri-City Volunteers, I was a board member. They do provide a lot of food and resources. When we talk about the Stack Center, right? What are we really doing to provide a little bit more of that? Hayward Promise neighborhood, HUSD, how are we integrating this with the agencies and organizations that are there? It's great that people serve on these bodies and stuff like that, but that's not enough. There has to be a legitimate, reported, regular standing item that reports out these new efforts, new days that we're going to be open here or in this location, and make that a recurring item in the agendas of these groups when we're engaging. So I think there's a lot there, but it's mostly around the infrastructure, the communication, and the relationship building that we have to have. And then when we're talking about the different types of foods, really highlighting what we are talking about when we say cultural competency, right? And I will say with the new Afghan refugee population, I was, very happy, forget which group it was, but, they had multiple different languages with the handouts. So both Pashto and Farsi. We need to do that in Spanish. We need to do it in Mandarin, our top 5 languages in the city as much as possible, because a lot of these communities that are relying on these services are disenfranchised, right? So how do we meet them where they're at? So I think you guys are on the start of like a great effort. I think that this really builds community, and I'm looking forward to what you guys have in mind. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, it was a great presentation and great comments from everybody. I'm kind of looking at the notes. Just, that those were good suggestions. Councilmember Wahab Spectrum and Salvation Army are 2 that I didn't see on the list, although some of the others, South Hayward Parish was on your list. So I know that the First United Methodist Church on B Street still has their Tuesday morning breakfast that, so there is a lot being done. Of course, the Chabot program, that was a city program, that wasn't Chabot, and some of us volunteered in it, I know, and I was astonished that people, and this is during COVID, I understand there was a lot of need, but it probably would happen now, even if it were still going on. We haven't been getting that food, so I think it had to end at some point. But the cars would just line up and people would wait for a couple of hours just to get kind of a basic package of food. It was an eye-opener. Councilmember Lambden mentioned the Youth Commission. That is absolutely a really good idea. We just had a meeting with them. The Local Agencies Committee had a meeting with the Youth Commission, and they are looking for projects, and this would be a great one. I think that was Project East, Project Eat mentioned in the staff report. That is really sad. There are those beautiful, I remember visiting schools when there were beautiful gardens at the schools and kids were learning how to grow food, and apparently because they don't have the resources, they don't have the program anymore.
Yeah, the program has been fully disbanded at this point.
That is a shame and needs to be restarted. This is where learning about food and learning about how to eat right starts in the schools, and it should be taught, and good nutrition should be taught. Because while we know that there are certainly, and we know there is need in our community, people who really just don't have enough food, there are others who have far too much food and food of the wrong kind, and that isn't healthy. And kids need to learn at a young age how much what you eat matters. But they need to have that food to eat too. And so I think waste, I would say you really need to concentrate on the area of waste, because we are told statistically enormous amounts of food are wasted in our country every year, probably right here in our city too. We try very hard in our household of 2 people to eat our leftovers, eat them at other meals, or bring things home when we're out eating and we have more than we can eat. But sometimes it just gets a little too old, or and there's waste, and I hate to see that, but it can be on a big scale. We had an event here that was sponsored by the state officials. It was a really nice thing. They came to tell us about grant money available about things, but and people were invited from other cities as well to come to this event. There was an enormous amount of food brought in for this event for maybe, I think altogether they probably had 50 to 60 people in 2 different sessions for that. But at the end, I just looked at that food and I I wondered what was going to become of it, and the state had brought it in. I do trust that they were going to take it somewhere, but this happens all the time where, we have events, there is extra food, and I know a long time ago, Alameda County Food Bank changed its practices to have more, set up systems where instead of them getting all the food and then bringing it back out to the communities, that the exchanges are done right here in the communities. Restaurants and food, food markets do now send, I believe, hopefully still, this is still going on, where they send leftover food to some of the places like South Hayward Parish and Fesco, some of the shelters that need food. But we really need to look for ways all of us, to not waste food. I think the cultural aspect of it is very interesting. I mean, one of the first things people say about Hayward is they like living here because, there are so many different cultures, and that's really an exciting thing. It's like living in the world, and I think people like to share those the different foods that are popular in different parts of the world, and so that's something that I know we have specialty markets, but that's an area where I'd like to see some more thought put into how we can really address that. And one idea that came into my mind was having some kind of a big food sharing fair, like, come sample these dishes from, each family bringing dishes from, that were part of their own heritage, might be something that could come out of this. But so there are a lot of avenues. I think the waste, and also getting to kids learning how to eat right and learning how to grow food and prepare it are two really important areas I would like to see worked on. And well, those are my comments. I won't be here in April when we adopt this plan, but I will look forward to hearing about it and participating to the extent I can. We need to get a lot of people in this community involved in this. Everyone eats, and everyone, food is important to everyone, and I think it is an area where we can maybe really do some community building and bring people together to try to solve some of these problems. So with that, I thank you for your effort launching these efforts, and everybody who has participated so far, and all the comments from council. And did we give you some feedback that is useful to you?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah, Emily and I have both written it all down, so thanks.
All right, well, I know we'll all look forward to hearing more about this as you move on with the program, but good job so far. So thank you for the presentation and all the comments. And we will now move on to our next item, which is item number 12 regarding adoption of a resolution approving an amendment to the City of Hayward's salary plan for fiscal year 2023. And for that we will hear from our city manager, maybe, or
our assistant city manager.
I'm sorry, our assistant city manager,
yes.
Ms. Youngblood. Okay, go ahead.
I'll just speak a little bit and turn it over immediately to the acting deputy director of human resources, Kakshi Master, who will share a presentation with you. Kakshi? There you are.
Hello, yes. I am here. One moment, please.
Are we frozen, or?
I think we're just waiting for the presentation.
Okay.
Kakshi, would you like me to share my screen for it?
Sorry, it's loading. It's just loading a little slowly. Sorry about that.
Okay.
All right, I think we have this. Apologies. Oh.
We see your screen, but it's on slide 3.
Yeah, is it not moving?
No.
Interesting.
Maybe if Geraldine can share, that might help.
Okay, I'll go ahead and
Sure.
start. Just have me, or just let me know when to advance.
Sure, thank you. All right, good evening, and apologies, I'm getting over a minor cold here, but I'm here to talk about the resolution recommending the approval of the City of Hayward salary plan for fiscal year 23. Next slide, please. And so these are, the adjustments here are mainly related to, first, a new classification that we're bringing here, the Equity and Inclusion Officer. And that position, the salary is set equivalent to the assistant to the city manager. And so this is a high priority position that we're bringing to the city manager's office. And so this was originally budgeted for as an analyst 2 position. Because this was elevated to an assistant to the city manager, the fiscal impact here is showing what it would be to advance that position to an assistant to versus an analyst. And then the remaining changes here, some of these, the ones related to fire, are all based on MOU survey data. And so according to the 1909 MOU, if any of the top 4 survey jurisdictions by September 1st reach an additional or reach an agreement such that it changes the market average or where our positions fall in the market, then those positions would be adjusted. And so there was a 0.59% adjustment. And then to get that, as the deputy chiefs have that differential with the 1909 and the officers, they would have that differential, and then the fire chief would need to be raised as well, just to keep that internal equity within the positions. And finally, on this slide, we have the Human Resources Manager, which is a position that the department has recently brought back after several years, and we're going to be having 3 to 4 managers overall. And so as we recruited for the position, the salary did not seem to be much higher than the senior HR analyst. It hadn't been adjusted since the position had not been filled. And so the position was surveyed 30% behind market. And so because we are recruiting for all those positions, we did bring that position up to 30%, or up 30% effective October 24th. The next slide. Next slide, please. And as a result of that change to the HR manager, we've made an additional adjustment to Deputy Director of Human Resources to keep it 10% above the HR manager. And our recommendation is that council adopts a resolution approving the revised salary plan. And I think with that, we are done. We can take questions. And again, apologies for the gravelly voice.
That's okay. Hope you're feeling better. All right, so are there any questions among council members? I'm not seeing any hands raised, so I will open the public hearing. Are there any? There are no members left in the chambers, and I see no hands raised among attendees and no, no request to speak. So I'll close the public hearing and I'll move back to council and recognize Council Member Wahab.
Yes. Do you mind going back to your slide?
Sure, or if Geraldine, if I could have you please go back.
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Here you go. And then just let me know what slide Councilmember Wahab.
One prior to this. Apologize. Yes. Okay. So I personally will move this item. I also just want to thank all of you guys for working on this. I also just want to highlight to the rest of the community that it is important that we genuinely have very competitive salaries to a lot of people just to be able to retain our staff, maintain our current staff, and also be able to compete to recruit the best and the brightest. So I really, really do appreciate this. I just want to highlight the work of our fire department. They have gone above and beyond. I've said this every time we talk about them, specifically from the COVID, all the work they've done on COVID, to be completely frank with you guys, as well as them taking on more responsibilities with mental health and homeless calls and so much more. So I really just want to thank everybody. I'm looking forward to also having a legitimate HR manager, hopefully moving forward, so they can help us with the recruitment of our public safety officials. That is big on our timeline for the next couple months. So I think all of these things help. And of course, when people work, they should get paid fairly. So thank you.
All right, Councilmember Wahab has moved the staff recommendation. Is there a second? Councilmember Lamnon seconds the motion. Seeing no further requests to speak, Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews, absent. Councilmember Lamnin?
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas?
Here for yes.
Councilmember Wahab?
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño?
Aye.
Mayor Halliday?
Yes, and the motion carries with 6 aye votes and 1 member absent. Okay, that now brings us to council reports and announcements.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I'd like to make
Go ahead,
an announcement.
Councilmember Salinas.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everyone that this Saturday is a trunk or treat at Heritage Park. And there'll be Hayward and Hayward area organizations and agencies distributing resources and programs and getting information out to parents about their services, particularly as we approach the holidays. But at the same time, people will be dressed up in costume, cars will be decorated, and we'll be passing out candy. So come on out. And I believe since it's at the park, it is pet friendly. So come on out, enjoy the park, enjoy the trunk or treat. And I hear that Kirby will be decorated as a haunted house. And oh, the other thing too, I should add is there'll be lunch distributed. Lunch will be distributed for kids there. They'll be distributing, I think burritos. So anyways, see you on Saturday. I think it's 11 to 1 o'clock. Okay.
At Heritage?
Yeah, at Heritage Plaza Park, across the street from the library.
Okay. You know, a year ago when we had this event, we actually, I think that was the same event that we inaugurated Kirby. And so here Kirby is going to make his first birthday appearance, I guess, at this event. So, yeah, sounds like a good time. Yeah, I know. It was last Halloween. Yeah. So time does fly, doesn't it? Okay, Councilmember Lamnon.
Thank you. Just wanted to appreciate Cal State East Bay. I had the privilege of attending the launch celebration of the Disability Research and Advocacy Center on campus that was just created there, and it's very interdisciplinary across the campus, and of course encouraged them to reach beyond the campus as well. But a couple of the exciting things I heard about there are integrated arts programs. There are dance companies like Access Dance, but that work with dancers from all different abilities into world-renowned performances. But there's no degree, no academic path for that work, and so East Bay may become the first place to actually offer degrees in working with artists, all different kinds of artists with all kinds of different abilities. So that was pretty exciting. And then also the policy research angle as we continue to look at universal design and some other things that they could be a resource for us to look at what are the right sizes of accommodations and what really makes sense. So that was very exciting, and congratulations to Cal State for that. And then I also had the privilege of leading a tour to a couple different sites in East County about concepts around tiny homes and live-work farm opportunities to bring together the circular food economy, housing insecurity, and so on. And got to hear from folks like Amos White and the 100,000 Trees Project, as well as UC Ag Extension and Wellnest and a bunch of other folks. So there's lots of great conversations going on. There's lots of great insights and opportunities. BART was there to talk about their land and so on. So it's just an exciting time to create great stuff in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you. Just wanted to thank everyone that came out to Keep Hayward Clean and Green event last Saturday. It was Make a Difference Day partnership with Cal State East Bay, and we had a lot of students out there, and they focused on the Tennyson corridor area. So just wanted to thank everybody for that. Also wanted to share with the public that I had an opportunity to do a ride along with District Command with Sergeant Faye Maloney, and just really wanted to commend her for her tremendous work. She's a huge asset to the department, and I got to see her firsthand interact with many of our unsheltered community members, and she just has a wealth of knowledge in terms of resources to connect them to the navigation center, other service providers. So I just wanted to highlight her good work in the police department, and hopefully the way that she interacts with the public is very positive, and hopefully we could see more and more of those positive interactions. And just wanted to thank her for letting me spend the evening with her. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And I don't see any other hands, so I'm going to move on to, we have no referrals this evening. We are going to adjourn our meeting this evening in honor and memory of one of our own long-tenured Hayward employees, Farid Ramazanzadeh. He was a 20-year employee and laboratory supervisor at in our City Public Works Department, and he passed away in a very unfortunate accident while vacationing in Ecuador. He was known throughout the city as one of the hardest working and easiest going coworkers. He would frequently come out of his office when he heard a familiar voice to greet and say hi to whoever stopped by the plant, and always with a smile. And I know I've been the recipient of some of those smiles when I've gone. I like to take people on tours out there at our water and wastewater treatment facilities out there. Farid was always forward-thinking and striving to stay ahead of the curve. Recently, he shared with staff that he had finished the new laboratory accreditation program. passively sharing that we were one of the first in Northern California and almost a year ahead of the deadline. So that kudos. Well, our Public Works Department does do amazing work. So they are going to miss him in that department, I think, and it really is sad. He was really a wonderful, warm-hearted, beautiful person. He was always smiling, willing to help anyone at any time, and he was also a loving father, husband, son, and brother. And so we certainly, our thoughts are with them, his family and his children, and his mother and his 3 sisters. I know that he will be missed very much by them, but also by his city family, and probably everyone who knew him. So, yes, yes, Councilmember Lamnon?
Thank you. I just wanted to add that not only was he beloved within the city, but also throughout the region. I was in the East Bay Dischargers Authority meeting. They also adjourned in his memory and recognized that in lieu of flowers, there's a request to donate to his favorite water charity to honor him and his work.
Right. I didn't have that information, but it was sent out by our city manager.
And I can just reiterate, it's charitywater.org, and then it's /Farid, Farid is the link.
And easy to use, I must say. I sometimes have difficulty, but I didn't with that one. So, in honor and memory of Farid Ramazanzadeh, this meeting is adjourned. We will next be meeting a week from tonight on November 1st at 7 p.m. Good night, everyone.